You're listening to Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Overdoing It, where our team of library workers dish about their latest reads, views, and passions alongside fascinating conversations with local luminaries. I am your host, Emily Goodman from the Office of Library and Information Services, and my pronouns are she, her. Let's dive in and discover who our guests are today.
Hey there, Chris Donovan. I am one of the community organizers for Providence.
Sheree DeMeo. I am the treasurer for Providence.
All right, so a little bit later in our show, we'll get to talk to Chris and Sheree about Providence and what that's all about. But before we do, let's get into the start of our show, as we always do, with what have you both been reading?
So I have been reading a book called Thanks for Everything, Now Get Out. And it's kind of an exploration of like the idea of gentrification, and right? Like, can you work toward the improvements and betterments of neighborhoods without inherently dooming them to be taken over by communities that are not their own, right? And that's just an interesting concept in and of itself. But what really puts the cherry on top for me with this one is the person who wrote the book uses Olneyville as their case study. So it is this like exploration back from like hundreds of years ago of its evolution into like, being a mill city up to kind of the turning point that it's in now. And I mean, this was written not that long ago, because they reference like Hungry Ghost Press, who is really popular here in Providence right now. So this was written just like within the last year or two. And it's just a really interesting exploration of like, how can you improve communities without dooming them? And there is a conclusion that it comes to, but I'm going to leave that as a mystery for everybody who wants to read it.
Great. Is that a local author?
I don't think he's a local author. If I recall, he had spent time in Providence, and that was how he kind of had Olneyville on his radar.
Okay.
But he came back to do interviews to talk to people like about the history of Olneyville, and put it through, like, look at this macro issue through this kind of micro lens of this specific neighborhood.
Very cool. Sheree, what have you been reading?
I'm looking at it now. It's called The Storytelling Animal, How Stories Make Us Human. And I picked it up as kind of homework for work, to be honest with you, because in trying to work with my coworkers, get them to understand like what I need them to do, et cetera, I find myself skewing more technical than anecdotal, and I've noticed that they respond more to the anecdotal. So I've just wanted to this book like spoke to me at the Barnes and Noble, and I know, and I'm sorry.
I think we need to keep the Barnes and Nobles alive, though. Like, right in opposition to Amazon, there's a place for our local bookstores, and then I think that there needs to be a place for a Barnes and Noble as a location. So that's fine.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, I'm early in it, but it just really talks about how humans respond to story and how we are made of stories. And, the author posits that the only things humans need really is food and community. Mm-hmm. And through stories, we build community.
That's so cool. I just finished reading, very much not in the same vein as the two of you, but I read The Pairing by Casey McQuiston, which is their newest title out. I believe it came out late last year, 2024. And it's a romance novel. It is two like longtime best friends who break up as they are en route to a like 2-week romp through Europe guided tour. And so they cancel the tour, they get a voucher that's good for 4 years. And now the book is starting at the 4-year mark where both of them have decided to cash in on their voucher and go on this trip they think on their own. And turns out it's going to be together with this group of people. And so it's sort of a rekindling rekindling of relationships. Both characters are bi, so there's a lot of just like it is an indulgent. I think would be the best word. The like fun word would be that a very sexy romp through Europe of the two of them, and it's really really wonderful. It's a great addition to the genre, the romance genre. I found it a little bit slow, but in the end, I'm really, really glad that I stuck with it. And I think, quick shout out as we're talking about bookstores, I talked about it a little bit with Heartleaf Books
Mm,
a couple months ago in my episode with them before the book came out. So now I can say I've read it and it's
nice.
definitely on my suggested list. Yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
took my first trip to Heartleaf the other day and had the honor of finally meeting the infamous Penny the cat.
Yay!
Yeah, so Heartleaf, it's over on Atwell's, and Penny the
Yeah.
cat is just like always chilling out on the shelves and everything. So you go
Mhm.
in, browse some good local book recommendations, get to pet a cat. Can't be any better than
Yeah,
that.
they're great. And they're also a cooperative. So you can become a member and support them in that way.
And they
Uh,
just got a shelf over at White Electric as well,
oh,
another co-op.
cool.
Yeah, so you can
Nice.
get some like Heartleaf recommendations at White Electric. So it's like go grab a coffee, and if you're looking for something to read, you can buy one of the books right there.
That's amazing. I love that. So, what have you both been watching recently? Any movies or TV shows?
So my reading tends to be very like heady reading,
Hmm.
and so all my other forms of media are like the stark other end of the spectrum of that. Like when I'm watching TV or movies or video games, like I want to get as like out of reality as I can. So for me, it's been a little bit of an obsession. I'm almost a little nervous talking about it again because I've been off of it for a few weeks, and I'm worried if I get talking about it, maybe I'll dive back in. But Baldur's Gate 3,
Okay.
um, the Dungeons and Dragons esque video game. I mean, you want to talk about like storytelling and world building and all of that. Like for a video game, the amount of choices and characters and story development that that thing has, like it just sucks you right in, gets you to care, and it's one of those things you're like, I'm just gonna pick it up for like 45 minutes, and then you're like, ah man, it's been like 3 hours. So it's a dangerous, dangerous toy, and I'm keeping a very like I'm keeping it at a close distance, just enough that I can like be like, I'll come back to you one day. But yeah, it
You
pulls me
set a
in.
timer when you start to say like you're only allowed
I mean, yeah,
three
but
hours
in
max.
the same way that you set an alarm to wake up in the morning and then you hit snooze 3 times, it's like yeah, I have the intention of keeping myself honest with it, but the trick with that is I need to actually follow the rules I set for myself. So
I just I've just been uh gobbling up anime. It kind of doesn't matter. It started with Sailor Moon because it's close to my heart, my childhood.
Hmm.
And I was whatever Netflix is like. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's if it's drawn like that, I'll do it. But in terms of movies, I'm trying to get back into movies. I watched Juror number two, the Clint Eastwood directed. Might be his last one. I don't know. He says it every year and then he doesn't. And that was really good. It was a thinker because by the time it ended, I was like, oh, that was kind of predictable. And then as I thought more, I was like, oh, okay. I just needed something slow and plotting as opposed to the dopamine hits
Mm.
that a lot of movies are. That being said, I did also watch Sonic 3 and it ended. I won't give it away, but neither myself nor the children in the theater were ready for how it ended.
did you watch the first two?
So my husband and I watched the first one in theaters. He refused to come with me to watch the second one. I haven't seen the second one yet.
That's so rude.
Look, I'm grateful for what I got. And then the third one I watched it at home because no, excuse me, I watched it in the theater, but I waited late because I didn't want to be in a theater full of kiddos.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a place in North Attleboro called the Cinema Pub that does like second run movies after they've like left the mainstream theater, and they also like serve food and drink in there. So you just like go sit in the comfy leather seat and then get like a dinner, and it's like cheap and everything too. So it's been my family tradition with my brothers and my dad that we go see the Sonic movies at Cinema Pub because we just on a lark went to go see the first one thinking like, oh well, it's gonna be garbage, but we'll go check it out. It actually wasn't that bad, and so now it's our
Yeah,
tradition. All the Sonic movies at the Cinema Pub.
We used to go to East Providence. What was it East Providence Cinemas, or
The
I can't
Patriot
remember the name.
Cinemas?
Yeah, R.I.P.
R.I.P. I was just thinking about that the other night. Like sometimes you just want to spend $3 and see a movie that you could watch at home, but it's just nice to sit in a movie theater.
The last movie I saw before the pandemic was in there, and I think it was either Bad Boys 4 or Cats.
Ugh. Emily, did you ever go to cinema to the Patriot
You
Cinema?
know, I don't think so. I think I talked about it a lot with my friends shortly before it closed down. And I don't think I ever made it. I'm not a huge movie person. And so I don't go out of my way to see movies in the theater as much as I like seeing them in that format. It's not really a thing that I do often enough. So I never made it before they closed.
Do you think that there is a spectrum of like movie watcher to book reader, and like do you feel like
Mm.
people lean on one end or the other of the spectrum, or do you think that like it's not mutually exclusive and you can be equally both?
I think it's not mutually exclusive, but I do think that people who primarily read books do struggle with movies in the way of adaptations. And I was recently thinking about this. So a thing that I've been watching, well, finished watching because it's over and I'm very sad about it, is I watched the Ghosts UK version, the original Ghosts that came out. There's an American version, which I don't think it's as good. We recently had an episode with people who do think the US version is better than the UK version. And I think I have a friend who feels the same way. And I'm ready to fight them about it. But I think that there's something to be said for the first thing you encounter is the true form. And so for people on
Mm.
this spectrum of books versus movies, people who read the book first feel very particular about the way that the book unfolds or the way that they interpreted the book. To then sit and watch somebody else's interpretation of it is really, really difficult. And so I think that spectrum is there of like, which did you encounter first? How did you first experience something? And then did you try to go to the other side? And could you do it? Or are you over analyzing it? Maybe. Um,
Overcommitted to like your interpretation of what it should
yeah.
be. Mm.
Yeah.
It's
So I
hard for
think
us to
there's a
let go of
place for
things.
book readers and moviegoers that are separate entities. Yeah. I'm with you, Sheree, though. I have been struggling to watch movies. I get about an hour or so into a movie, and because I've been doing so much of like TV show streaming, I think I hit though, like we haven't climaxed yet. I haven't really figured out what the resolution's going to be, and I need a break. I stop it. I watch them all at home and just like pause for a little bit and walk away. Yeah, you're nodding. Do you feel the same way with
Oh,
movies?
absolutely. I mean, I studied film in college, and they're also just different now. It's not like when I think about like the early 2000s, like the 90s, the way those movies were, like even the saturation, it was like much duller. It really like drew you in. It was, I feel like it was more story based, where a lot of movies,
Mm-hmm.
not all, but the more mainstream ones are like high saturation. Things are happening as quickly as possible to keep your attention. And it's competing with streaming. So yeah, I totally get it. Like it was an endurance test to watch Juror Number Two because it was a callback to the old type of movie. And I'm sitting there and I noticed I was on my phone. And I was like, ah, fudge. I don't know why he's in that car now. What is he doing? Now we have to go back. Um, it's funny though, because like when you asked that question, Chris, I was thinking about my mom, who was a huge bookworm, and in the '90s there was this moment where like any book John Grisham wrote turned into a movie, almost like instantly. It felt like,
Mm.
and my mother did hold the book kind of. She was very particular about it to the point where she would just ruin it. She'd be like, "Don't trust him," and it's like, "Ma,
Let me go on the journey.
get out." But she didn't really enjoy movies. No, I think she didn't like, to your point, Emily, she didn't like naturally want to go see a movie. I think the last movie she had actually wanted to see was Norbert.
Interesting.
I don't even.
She walked.
Is that Eddie Murphy? You are losing it right now, Sheree.
Because she was so mad at Eddie Murphy. She felt like he lied to her.
For making such a terrible movie. I mean, listen, I'm not saying that like Eddie Murphy has only made terrible movies, but like, you know, we're not talking. Oh, I'm getting the eyes right now.
You are getting the eyes.
Like,
Eddie Murphy was an institution until like the clumps.
I think maybe I didn't really get into Eddie Murphy until the clump, so maybe I only saw like the decline. So don't come after me for tarnishing
Don't
Eddie
worry about
Murphy's
me.
reputation. I don't have to worry. I just have to worry about Eddie. All right, Eddie Murphy. I apologize for coming after you.
As you should. He made classics.
So, what's the best Eddie Murphy movie in your opinion?
See, I'm going to say something and someone's going to come after me.
What's one of your favorite or the best Eddie Murphys? It doesn't have to be number one.
I guess two. So it's Coming to America, the first,
Mm-hmm.
and Trading Spaces.
Okay.
A Vampire in Brooklyn is a close third because it's so campy. If you want black '90s camp, and the worst wigs you've ever seen in your life, A Vampire in Brooklyn.
Excellent. I've never seen that one, so I'll have to put it on my watch list.
I'm looking at his filmography right now, and yeah, it does. If you look at it chronologically, you can almost see the shift in the tone, like from that nutty professor-esque. I think Doctor Dolittle is really where the shift happened. That changed him. Anyway, thanks for having us on your Eddie Murphy podcast, everyone.
You're very welcome.
Sorry.
So I want to go back to Sonic real quick, Chris, since you've seen Sonics, all three of them apparently. Were you as upset about the ending of Sonic 3 as Sheree and...
I have not yet seen Sonic 3 because it is not yet at Cinema Pub. It's still in mainstream theaters. So I keep checking every week. Cinema Pub only releases their movie schedule like a couple days in advance of the next run. So I check every week to be like, is it now? Is it now?
Okay.
And it's not now yet. So I'm in deep suspense.
But you'll be there the first day that they show Sonic 3.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll say this. So there was one little boy who was like engaging with the film in the way that kids do, like talking back to it and whatnot. And when we hit a specific point, and you'll know exactly when that point is, and I will not give it away, that child was quiet. And I'm almost certain that child and his parents needed to have a conversation in the car.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think that child learned lessons that they weren't ready for.
That's what good storytelling does.
Not via Sonic and Shadow, I don't think.
I don't know about that though. Like, I don't know. Think about like what was it? Land Before Time? Or I don't know, like Never Ending Story, the horse in the mud thing. Like that just broken people for their whole lives, you know? A good story, even a children's one, is going to teach you something. I think. Should at least. There should be a responsibility. Now, granted, I have no idea what lesson we're talking about here, so I'm just completely talking out of nothing.
I don't think you are. I mean, kinda. Watch it and then text me when you get to that scene.
All right. I just checked Cinema Pub schedule and still not there. Still not there.
Well, it's coming. Okay. Anything else that you guys have been loving recently, like trying out for the first time? Anything like that you want to share with me, with the listeners? Any suggestions of things that have like been way up your alley before we move to our main segment?
We're talking about media, right? Not just generally.
It could be, well, what do you got, Chris? It can be generally.
So my friend runs an event called, like, not an event. It's like a gathering at his house that he calls Garlic Fest, where the idea is it's just like potluck, but everyone brings something garlic themed. And so, went last time and I made like a 44 clove garlic soup. That was super, super solid. But this time I was like, I want to do something like a little out there, right?
Okay.
And so I had a little conversation with ChatGPT of like, give me a couple ideas of things that are like, pushing the boundaries, but are still reasonable, right?
So Christmas
And
AI garlic dish.
yeah, yeah. So one of the ideas that it came up with was garlic cotton candy. And so I have been kind of a mad scientist in my kitchen for the past week or so, trying different iterations of infusing sugar with garlic flavoring and making garlic cotton candy. And I gotta say, like, I have had some really not great batches, but I think I'm starting to crack the code. So, in terms of like things that I'm currently jazzed and obsessed about, right now it is garlic cotton candy.
I love that. Are you caramelizing or like deepening the flavor of either the sugar or the garlic or both?
So I got a cotton candy machine, just something
Hmm.
like cheap little home one. It doesn't make the huge stuff, but by nature of the process of like how the heat works and the way it spins, it like caramel that's like that is the process is it caramelizes the
Mm.
sugar which creates those strands. So my first batch I tried, and I really shouldn't have done this first because it has been almost impossible to revert the damage I've done. Um, I just tried straight mixing some garlic powder in with the sugar, hoping that that would be enough. But the garlic powder burned, and
Hmm.
so like the first spin on it was like, okay, not too bad. But then by like still to this day, there's still just like a little bit of a like burnt garlic taste. And I really need to
Mm.
clean that thing. So second batch, what I tried is I've chopped up fresh garlic, sat it in a jar of sugar, airtight, let it sit for like 5 days, took it out, strained out the big garlic pieces, dehydrated it to get it back to like a dry, crystally sugar, and then ran it through the machine. So it's like this like sweet toasted garlic weirdness. I love
I
it.
love that. Sure is not convinced.
Don't worry, Sheree. I'll make you some. Next time I see you, I'll bring you a little bit of garlic cotton candy.
I mean, okay, I respect the gastronomy, but if it were like straight garlic is what straight garlic with no relief. The only relief is sugar. That sounds like it sounds like a hell on earth.
You are you are wrong because it is like the garlic isn't overwhelming. So you do like to Emily's point, you get that like kind of like roasted garlic flavor, but then like like a sweet back note to it. That being
If
said,
there
don't
were,
talk to Gary because Gary tried it and he will say that it's the worst thing he's ever tasted.
and I'll trust Gary. I trust Gary. But if there were like a rosemary or some kind of
Mm.
conduit that can work with both sugar and garlic, I think you need a mediator.
You know how I
Don't
feel
hey,
about mediator, Sheree. I just like to lean right into the chaos. But all right, I can do a sub batch of like a you think rosemary, garlic, cotton candy.
so there's a book that is good but also a little problematic called the Flavor Bible, and I use it. It's not recipes. You build recipes from it, but it just tells you who works well with who.
Mm.
So
Okay.
say you wanted something garlicky. I mean garlic is, it's one of the holy trinity, so there's like 5 pages on garlic alone, but it tells you who works well with garlic.
There's a I feel like I'm going to pull us down a rabbit hole, but I really am curious how a book about flavor profiles gets problematic.
It's very Eurocentric.
Mm.
Uh,
So
heard.
if say you wanted like indigenous flavors, say you wanted to know like, hey, what works with bison, it would focus more on like European flavors as opposed
Mhm.
to or European or maybe East Asian as opposed to like maybe an indigenous or African. Like I can't find the spice. I'm gonna mispronounce it. I can't think it starts with a B like baboa, but I can't think of the name of it, but it's a really beautiful Ethiopian spice blend. It's not in the book. So
Mm,
so that's just been trial and error. That's why it's problematic to me.
heard.
Yeah.
What's been your best discovery by using that book and creating a dish with your flavor pairings?
How much it's fascinating how seafood and fruit really work well together. Like a salmon mango, now you're kind of in the Caribbean. Or like shrimp and blackberries, they kind of go well together. Like it that's fascinating to me. And it's been really nice to like break out of like the stew of the
Mm-hmm.
6 months straight of stew that I've been in. I've fallen back in love with sage. Sage is a really powerful tool. And bay leaves have a place. I know there's a big joke like bay leaves are they do nothing, but you will notice when a bay leaf is not a part of the equation.
I've seen that online of like, what's that bay leaf doing in there? I was like, have you ever even just smelled a bay leaf? Like, you'll understand what it's doing if you just take a minute with it. I think people just see a leaf and they dismiss it, but yeah, it is really powerful.
Bay leaf requires patience. You have to trust the bay leaf to do what bay leaf is going to do.
I feel like we're gonna create a meme here where it's just like, gotta trust Bay, and it's just bay leaves.
Yes,
Gotta trust my
trust
Bay.
bay.
Gotta trust my Bay.
Bay is looking out for you. Bay just takes a minute to activate. That's all.
Get McCormick on the line. We got a whole new marketing campaign.
It needs to meet its friends, meet its neighbors, cultivate community in the pod.
All we need is what? Food and community? What
Yeah,
more does Bay represent?
perfect.
Bay is your bridge.
And that is a perfect bridge. Thank you, Chris, for taking us on this journey down this rabbit hole. Because now we can talk about what we're really here for in terms of community building is PechaKuchaPVD. So would you both explain a little bit to our listeners who maybe have never heard of it? What is PechaKucha and how did you each get involved with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'll hit like a little bit of kind of like the history end of it, Sherry, if you want to hit the heart end of it. This whole thing started in Tokyo in 2003. A couple of architects found that you give an architect a microphone, you're not getting it back, and they were looking for a way to get people to be able to communicate more with less. So they come up with a format, 20 images that each last 20 seconds. It's like a 6 minute and 40 second, presentation format. Came here to Providence in 2009, and we've adapted it to like the creative and cultural community that we've got here. And for us, it's really like a show and tell for grown-ups, right? Like people are like, "Oh, is it like a TED Talk?" And I'm like, if you were at a bar with one friend scrolling through 20 pictures on your phone over a beer, that's more of the vibe of like what it's like. So we've been doing it here for March is going to be 16 years, and it's really just about community storytelling. Sheree, you want to hit a little bit more on the vibe of the night?
Yeah, the vibe is fascinating. It depends on if there's alcohol at the event that changes the vibe. But what's really cool is that something that I've noticed is around slide 4 or 5 of every presentation, people lock in, even if they're having like their side conversations or anything like that. They lock in because the presenter, I feel like their passion really kicks off. Like the nerves are subsiding a little bit, and they're like really digging into the thing because it's every PechaKucha is a passion project. Excuse me. It's not for work. It's not. I mean, it could be something about your work that gets you jazzed, that wakes you up, but the passion kicks in around slide 5, and the nerves flow away, and yeah, it's show and tell. It's like this is something that's really important to me, and I put an amount of work into these 20 slides.
Nice edit there.
Hey, sometimes you ain't got it, but I put work into these slides, and I know this thing like in my heart, and I want to share this. And I'd say 8 times out of 10, there are folks in the audience who are like, that speaks to me too, or some flavor of that speaks to me too. And you'll see folks who from like different walks of life clumping together over this anchor to keep it Rhode Island, of whatever, the PechaKucha subject was. Like speaking for myself, my first PechaKucha was about Microsoft Excel, and it is near and dear to my heart. Just the way I think it's just perfect. So I went on a good 6-minute rant about it, and afterwards, folks came up to me and were like, "Yes, I love Excel too, and I get annoyed when people say make this an Excel when it should be a database, etc., etc." So it's just nice finding your people, and maybe it's not permanent, but in that evening, you're not alone in whatever whatever gets you jazzed. Like it gets these other people jazzed too, and it's it makes you kind of bold, makes you like feel good and like not alone because left to your own devices, people think they're weird for liking whatever. It's like, no, you're
Mhm.
not weird. You just haven't found, or maybe you are weird, but you haven't found your people who are your flavor of weird yet.
Yeah, I think everyone is weird, and everybody's weird should be celebrated, and like that's the vibe. And with like, sure, it was funny when Sheree's submitted the idea for her Excel presentation. We're not a curated night. Like we don't go around and say like, okay, like you're going to be in the lineup, you're going to be in the lineup. It's very much an open call to the community, where it's like if you've got something you're excited about, if one of our themes speaks to you, sign up, right? Tell us what's going on. And so I had never met Sheree before, and I just see like in the sign up sheet, it's like Sheree DeMayo, the joys of Microsoft Excel. And I was like, whew, okay, all right. Like this is, don't know where to put this in the lineup. Like this could be one of the most boring things anyone's ever heard. All right, let's see how it goes. And then, the joy of this whole thing is like, to Sheree's point, like it's people's passions, right? So like, you know, it, like that night, Sheree didn't go up there and just be like, and this is what I love about Microsoft Excel, but like turned it into a story and this like very animated, engaging thing. Like I, if I would have bet $1,000 that there would have not been a laugh during that presentation, I would have owed $100,000 to somebody, because it brought the house down with how, not just how passionate like Sheree was about it, but also just like how she connected it to being such like a relatable thing, and like making you connect to something. Like it felt like more than Microsoft Excel. Like yes, we were talking about Microsoft Excel, but in so many ways we weren't talking about Microsoft Excel. And so like that's kind of the vibe and the energy of the whole thing, is like everybody's got some niche passion, something they're super super excited about, but like there are these themes of like humanity underneath it all, and that
Yeah.
tends to be like what connects everybody throughout the night, both presenters and audience, because each night's got like between 6 to 8 presenters, couple like 100 plus people in the audience or whatnot, and it just brings community together with these like weird things that you didn't know would connect people, until you start talking about them and building that community.
What's really funny, sorry to just jump in for 2 seconds. So that night it was nerves. I was just fueled by nerves. And there was another gentleman who did a pacha about his love of architecture, but it was truly just a love letter to his girlfriend. It was super sweet. He's like, and this is, I like this picture. I love this architecture. Me and my girlfriend went here, and he like every by the end of it, it was just him professing his love. Like it was
He loved the architecture of the buildings he went to with his girlfriend. Is that kind of
pretty
the
much.
vibe? That's excellent. I love it.
Yeah, it was it. It's really interesting how natural themes come up too.
I was curious though. So it sounds like Chris, you've been involved in this from the jump. But how did it get to Providence? And then also, Sheree, how did you learn about it to start to pitch your presentation that night?
So I haven't been on since the jump. It came here 2009, and I went to the 100th event that was in 2017, I want to say. And John and Stephanie, who had been leading it for some time, they're like, "Hey, we've been doing this for a couple years. We're kind of like hitting our wall. We've said a couple times that we'd love to hand this off to somebody else in the community, but nobody's really expressed interest. So now that we're at 100 events, like maybe this is it. Like if nobody jumps up, maybe we end at 100." And I had been in Providence for a little over a year at that point, and it really, PechaKucha had become a place for me to find community, right? Like I knew people here, but I didn't feel like I had like a truly deeply rooted community. And PechaKucha was a place where I felt like I could like go meet some new people, hear some interesting stuff, get a sense of like what's going on in the city, and like find people who are more my vibe of like curious and wanting to do stuff and learn about things and be engaged. So when I heard there was possibility of it just not existing anymore, I was like, that doesn't feel good to me. So I'd reached out to them and I said, hey, I don't know like what this would involve, but if you want me to be involved somehow, I'm glad to like have a conversation. And they were like, all right. They're like, why don't you come to the next PechaKucha and do a presentation and then we'll talk. So I put together a presentation on like why PechaKucha was important to me and why I wanted to be involved in it. And I make the joke that's not really a joke that after that they handed me a laptop and a Ziploc bag full of $1 bills and said, there you go, there's PechaKucha, it's yours now. And so that was 2017. So I've hit going on 7.5 years with it now, and have been working on building the community of it since. Um, tag off to you, Sheree.
I found out about it through Instagram, through PVD GCal. Shout out to them. If you want to know what's going on in Providence, like the fun, funky side of Providence, PVD GCal. And same, like I've been living in the state. I'm born and raised in New Jersey, and I've been here maybe 15 years. And community is hard because Rhode Island's kind of, no, it's not kind of. Rhode Island is insular. There are a lot of folks who were born here or have like seamlessly integrated into the culture. And if you don't know what like a hot wiener is, that's blasphemy. So you're you're not allowed in the club. But yeah, I was looking for community, and honestly, I just needed something different. Like I didn't want to go to a bar, I didn't want to go to a club or anything like that. I just need something different. And I was, oh geez, I think it was an interesting time because maybe I was about to go to grad school. I think I was about to start grad school, so I was really Excel forward, and I was like, people need to know about this. The people need to know. And so PechaKucha came up, and I had looked at it before, but I was like, oh no, I could not possibly do that. And then I just filled it out, expecting to not get taken in. I was like, it's got to be full or something like that. And yeah, so I guess I've been a part of PechaKucha, like in this treasurer role for almost a year. It's been fun.
Had you attended before you presented, or did you just hear about it and decide to present?
I didn't attend, which I probably should have to get like an understanding of like.
No, I love
Nope.
it.
No, I think when people like, all right, I think I'm going to speak very broadly. I think generally people get this like energy in anything in life where it's like you feel like things are supposed to be a certain way, right? Like I need to go and learn how the right way to do this thing is. And we are very much a community of like there's not a right way. We have a limitation or like I don't want to say limitation, but like we have a format, right? The 20 images, 20 seconds each, but what you do within that, like that's all you. And what I find most exciting as someone who's been, I've seen hundreds of these things and been doing it for, 7, 8 years. Like, I love when people kind of reinvent how you can approach the format a little bit, right? Like, we've had people, do some like songwriting over some of their presentations. One of the ones that sticks out to me, the theme was After Dark. And one of our presenters, for whatever reason, it sparked in them thinking about screensavers from Windows 95. And so their whole presentation, it was 20 of their favorite screensavers from the Windows 95 like starter. The pack was actually called After Dark because when your computer screen goes off, it goes dark, right? So their whole presentation was them reading in alphabetical order the like 175 different screensaver titles from Windows 95 while their favorite screensavers were going on behind them.
Oh
And it's
my
just
God.
like sometimes you get this like really deep heartfelt presentation, but other times you just get like weird, creative, wonderful stuff and everything in the spectrum in between. So like for that reason, Sheree, like no, because your Excel one, it was perfect and beautiful in exactly the way that it should be, in exactly the way that like other people's are perfect and beautiful. Like there's no right way to do it, and if you get bogged down in the right way, like you lose that opportunity for creativity and weirdness.
That's fair.
I'm glad we agree.
Oh, it's more than
I
fair.
also think that you serve as an inspiration for people listening, people who find you on the internet, find PechaKucha on the internet, to just go in, just do it. Just, find your passion and jump in with both feet. That's so cool.
You got to take risks. I mean, especially I think to build community and to break down barriers, right? Like, sure, I was alluding to this earlier, and it's something that back when Providence was doing the um, cultural plan that they just released, like the revised cultural plan, they had offered an opportunity for like different creative groups to run focus groups. They had a couple questions that they wanted people to discuss and everything. So at the time, and this was during COVID, so we did it all over Zoom. We had put together a focus group of PechaKucha folks, people who had presented, who had attended, and just were like, Providence is thinking about what the creative and cultural community looks like. Let's have a conversation around it. And one of the things that really came out of that and has stuck with me since is um, the people that we had involved talked about how for them, like PechaKucha was an opportunity for bubbles to intersect, right? They're like,
Mm.
Providence is really good at like you can find your people, right? You can find your group who's got your niche interest and who does your thing, and it's not hard to find that group of people. But everybody spoke to this challenge of like, but it's harder to break outside of that group and cross collaborate and share ideas. And so the common thread that came out of that was that PechaKucha was an opportunity once a month where like you could not only just share your thing but hear about other people's things and find ways to collaborate. One of the ways that I actually like saw this in action in a way that I'm still like, this is so cool, was we were still doing PechaKuchas during COVID. We found a way to live stream it, keep it zippy and like efficient, but still fun. And during one of our live streams, the theme was bird's eye view. We had one presenter who was talking about the border of Providence, and like they created a walking tour where you could walk the entire like border of the city boundaries of Providence, and another presenter who does bird watching and was talking about their bird watching stuff. And then through the chat, like this is even outside of an in-person over a beer kind of thing, just over the chat on the side, the two of them were like, we should collaborate on something, and they created a series of Providence City birdwatching tours. And so it's like those kinds of like moments where you get these people with their different niche interests coming together to find a way to like make those little bubbles just a little bit bigger, even if it's only like temporarily, just that collaboration and growing the community spirit. I love it.
So I'm going to just review my questions. I have some like philosophical questions, but we're coming down to the wire. So I'm going to ask you some of our practical questions. So, first of all, I've noticed I looked at your schedule for 2025 and it looks like you guys move around the city. So, how do you determine where it's going to be and how can people tap in and find where you are?
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is community run. And I mean that on every stretch of the imagination. Like our board, our event organizers, our presenters, our event volunteers, like everybody is a volunteer. And gives like does it because they believe in it, because they care about it. Same goes for our like the community that hosts us, right? Like we go to places that we like to think are interesting, maybe places that people haven't seen before, but also people that want to welcome us into their spaces. So we are really, really lucky in that we've like developed these long-term relationships with folks who appreciate what we're doing and give us the opportunity to go into really unique, interesting, and a lot of times, places that people don't normally poke their heads into. Um, New faces, new places, new ideas. That's like a little tagline vibe of what we do. Um, so that's kind of like the bouncing around thing is like we want in every way we want to challenge people. Oh, and it's free. I think that's something we haven't hit on, and part of like the whole like this whole volunteer community thing is like we've been doing this thing 16 years and you never have to pay to go to an event. Like if you want to get a beer or something, or if you want to throw us a couple bucks so we can get a new microphone when one breaks, like we appreciate those kind of things. But like at the end of the day, like there are so few third spaces that exist. And I think libraries
Mhm.
are the ultimate third space in the world. And I just love that places like that can exist. And so to have community third spaces where there's no cost to entry to get in, and you can just go and have an experience and connect with people, like that's hugely, hugely important for us. And so it's other people in places that believe in that and want to help cultivate that in the community is the reason why we're able to do what we do. What was the other question?
Great question. I don't remember. No, it's how people can find you.
Oh yeah, I mean, we got the things. So Instagram's like our big. Sheree's looking at me. What things? Um, Instagram is our probably most consistent communication platform to keep up with things, but we've got a website, PechaKuchaPVD.org. Everything is PechaKuchaPVD, and that is PechaKucha, in case for some reason you don't know how to spell PechaKucha off the top of your head. Um,
Weirdo.
and I guess I should also hit that, like, it means chit chat. In like the
Oh,
translation
okay.
is chit chat or the sound of conversation, so that's like the Japanese translation of it. So yeah, so Instagram, we got a website, we have a Facebook, but like who's still using Facebook right now? But we do have the I'm getting the eyes from Sheree again. And then we got an email list, so if you want to be like in the loop ahead of everybody else, like the email list is a good way to sign up, and you do that through the website.
Cool. Can you talk about some of the themes that you've got coming up for 2025 that you're really excited about?
Yeah. um all right, so the one that I'm excited about is April's theme of elephant in the room. So that is just on the cusp of Mental Health Awareness Month. So as our crew, what we do is we kind of like put a whole table full of post-it notes of any theme that could work, and then we all just start, like, it's like a um, almost like a Jenga tower of like moving things around to see what like stays and what falls. And so elephant in the room, we were like, okay, like that's really interesting, and that could speak to this idea of like mental health conversations and like what is happening right in front of us that we're not really talking about. So we started talking about that. Then to jump onto the other part of the conversation about the places that we go to. So Roger Williams Park had reached out to us at some point and was like, hey, we'd love to like find ways to collaborate with y'all. And so looking at this, we were like, okay, so like, I wonder if Roger Williams Park would host us for this elephant in the room, because it's like the nod to the whole fact that we're like near the zoo and everything. So now the Roger Williams Park is going to be hosting us for that event, and we're also partnering up with First Works for that event, who, they're what they want to kind of focus on through the artists that they're going to be adding to the lineup is the idea of arts advocacy, and how art is something that a lot of people take for granted, and it needs the support in order to keep it going and everything. And so the elephant in the room of that. So just, it's one of those things where like it was this throwaway idea at a moment that has really just manifested into something real. And the other thing that I have to be excited about, because it's just like feeling too beautifully perfect, and there's still part of me that's like, I don't know if we can actually pull this off, but we're gonna pull it off because we get crazy ideas and we do it. Is We were looking at the calendar. We're usually the last Wednesday of the month, and the last Wednesday of the month is December 31st, New Year's Eve. We're like, all right, well, what if we moved it a week early? Well, now you're talking Christmas. And we're like, all right, so we got two choices. We either cancel December's event, which we are the second longest running PechaKucha in the world. We do it every month. We don't take months off. We're like, so do we, for the first time in a while, like actually take a month off? Or do we lean in and do a New Year's event? And through that conversation, somebody came up with a theme of drop the ball as a theme. And so we were like, all right, so now we need to figure out how we can find a way to take this theme, make it not just a PechaKucha night, but also roll it into like a whole New Year's event and everything. So that's the like wild ambition that I'm super stoked for coming
That's
up.
awesome. Are you going to do it? So they run at 8:20, right?
Yep,
2020 is
military
the
time 2020,
time.
which is the nod to the 20 images 20 seconds.
I love it. Are you going to have people doing presentations like more than usual, start later or something, so that you're doing something right at midnight?
I'll send you an invitation to the planning committee, and you can you can help us figure all that out. Right now we're working on partners and venue, because
Okay.
those are the, like, those are the big pieces of, we can't do it alone, and we need to know that we've got somewhere that we can do it. But there's some promising stuff happening with that already. So
Very cool.
yeah, and we got 11 months to plan. So
Excellent. And finally, what is your advice for people who want to try PechaKucha?
I'm pointing to Sheree on this one.
Hmm.
I guess the first one's get out of your head. I've done 3. I was in my head for one of them, really in my head, and it was obvious. Yeah, you have to get out of your head. You have to um, and pick something that you want to talk about for 6.5 minutes, because it's going to feel really long and really short at the same time. And you have to make 20 slides around it. So you have to, there's effort, that you have to put into it. And if it's boring you while you're making the slides, that's going to come through as you're speaking. Like there's very few like taboo topics, really, as long as you are an adult about it and like passionate about it. Um, Give yourself time to actually, like, you're not going to put it together in one night. Um, Tech wise, Google Slides, that's the primary one. So if you, like me, I'm a Canva queen. So I had to adjust to Google Slides. But yeah, that's where you want to build it, because if you try to build it somewhere else and move it to Google Slides, the proportions are going to be wild. So you don't want to do that. But I'm not going to tell you to have fun with it, because it's not going to be fun. It's going to be an anxious thing. You're going to be anxious unless you are an absolute like speaking professional. You know what I mean? Public speaking professional. You're going to be anxious, and you just need to make peace with that. And honestly, it could fuel you. That perfect blend of anxiety and passion. God only knows what will happen. Um, and it's really tough, because I think a lot, speaking for myself, and this is speaking more about me than anyone else, you always feel like folks are judging you, like watching you. Like when you're in public, you're like, somebody really cares about the shirt that I'm wearing. They're gonna write about it in the paper. Like it's a big deal. This community, that the audience that shows up really wants to hear what you have to say. They really care about it, and they are listening with both ears, and they are taking you in with their hearts. There's no gotcha. There's no unintended laughter. You know what I mean? There's no apathy there. It's like a truly well-meaning community that wants to hear it. So go in with that knowledge. Don't go in thinking that you have to prove anything to anyone, or that, try to take the chip off of your shoulder and just let them and let the audience embrace you.
And just sprinkling on top of that, it's a sense of like trusting yourself that, the weird thing, or the, thing that you're passionate about, or that thought that has been running through your head of like, I wonder if anyone else like thinks about this. Like, take the risk, because you would be surprised at how often, you know what you're talking about, the people who will come up and be like, I was thinking the same thing last week. I think of it like that TikTok meme where it's like, say the weird thing, right? Like, lean into your weird, be brave, and you taking that first step is likely going to inspire other people to feel valid in themselves, and then want to share, maybe not at a PechaKucha, but just maybe in their lives. The amount of times I hear that someone has inspired somebody else through simply just like sharing their story, it's countless.
Yeah. Be your kind of weird. Because there's like a commodified weird.
Hmm.
Be your weird.
I love it. Well, we will link in our show notes to PechaKucha's Instagram and website, so people can see what the upcoming topics are, where they're going to be, and sign up, hopefully.
Oh, one last thing. On the website, there are all of the recorded PechaKuchas, yeah?
Yeah, so Tokyo, who's the grandparent of the whole thing, created the whole deal. They do have an online archive. So if you search the Providence community or directly through our website, there's a link to the Providence community. You can go back. If you look for the September 28th, 2022 event themed Bird's Eye View, you can listen to Sheree's Joys of Microsoft Excel.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. That one's going to be taken down.
I don't
That
know
one
about that.
no, it has a virus attached. Don't go to it.
But yeah, they're all up there. So it's this like community archive of Providence's stories too.
We wrap up the show with a segment called The Last Chapter, where we talk about a library or bookish related question. And today I'm going to pose a question to you both. What makes a book or a story memorable to you? Is it characters or plot or something about the writing style or something else entirely?
I think for me, I want to be surprised. And maybe that is in a character being relatable or so unrelatable in a way that I don't expect, or a mystery to solve. But yeah, I want to be surprised. I don't want to be bored.
Same. I was going to say I need a good twist and I need growth. I don't want a perfect protagonist that does not change from beginning to the end. Like, yeah, I need a good, and maybe if somebody's like, if somebody's murdered, that's okay too.
Can that be the twist or no?
I guess it would depend. Like if you really like the character and then they get murdered, like that's.
Yeah, if it's a kill your darling situation, if I've been writing with you this whole time and then somebody just murders them, that's gonna be. I might close the book at that point. I might be really upset.
that whole like tangent makes me think very like, without getting into like elements of it, but like gives me very Game of Thrones vibes.
And I won't give anything away, but that does relate to Sonic 3.
Oh, come on, Cinema Pub.
Bring it full circle.
I think for me, books that or stories that feel like they are grappling with the essence of the world, if that makes sense. This feels very broad to say, but oftentimes I find that the books that stick with me over time are things that I've tried to grapple with before and the book grapples with, and gives me a new perspective. So maybe it's new perspective is the thing that makes a book stick with me a little bit more, when I can sit with the idea of something while I'm reading, but also, or listening, but also afterwards, that like stays resonant with me. That's definitely something that makes me remember a story. Which could be murder.
Are you grappling with murder?
I feel like you can't incriminate yourself on a podcast if you are. So just blink twice.
Just make 20 slides about it and show up.
Listen, there's the show How to Get Away with Murder, and I'm sure lots of people watched it and were taking notes just in case eventually you ever need that information. So I'm not the first to bring it up.
We are in a true crime era.
That's true.
Although cults are the big thing right now. Murder's kind of out, cults are in.
But they are not mutually exclusive. As you get into these cults, I'm one of the people who Netflix has pushed some cult information to, and it's pretty wild.
I was getting ready for you to say that you are a cult leader, and this was just an initiation for us to join you.
You'll be getting an email after this about my chosen
I mean, if
cult.
I get a sick robe, I'd think about it.
Ooh, okay.
Community and food, that's all you need.
You give me a robe, we're having a conversation.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap up our show. Thank you both so much for joining me.
A true pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to respond to the last chapter question, or just reach out to the show, send us an email at overdoingitpod@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at overdoingitpod. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to help us reach more Rhode Islanders. Overdoing It is proud to be a resident partner of the Rhode Island Center for the Book and is brought to you by library staff and community partners all around the Ocean State. The project has been funded in part by the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services. Thank you again for listening. This has been another episode of Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. We're overdoing it, but you're doing just fine.
Can't wait to see your PechaKucha.
I think my takeaway from this conversation is, you know, you might think you know a lot, but then you learn that Eddie Murphy had an entire prolific career before The Nutty Professor. And so maybe you should challenge your assumptions of things and, you know, break your boundaries.